Hello and welcome to all the Hillians out there. I'm Joe, and today I've got the start of our Twilight Princess in Focus playlist before we actually get to the actual discussion and dissection of every inch of this game. We'll start with the background lore to it because this is very important and it's very confusing. I'm not going to lie. I think this has one of the most confusing backstories as far as Zelda games goes. I don't say that as criticism. I say that as because I genuinely find it really confusing. And this is as much for myself to make sense of as it is, I hope, for you all. So do bear in mind, and this will be me just exploring the background. Now, before we get to the background of Hyrule in the time of Twilight Princess, let's get into the background of the Twilight Realm. And I'm going to try to summarize and keep it very brief. Now, the Twilight are the people who would go on to colonize the Twilight Realm, or I should say be banished there. They're descendants of a tribe of Hylian sorcerers, and they're referred to also as the interlopers, and they were condemned to the Twilight Realm as punishment because they attempted to use magic to claim the Triforce. And they were to fail in their attempt to conquer the Sacred Realm. And they were thus banished to a different dimension, one in which there was very little light. And this realm of theirs was to have as its only sources of light two sacred orbs known as the souls. And these are kept in a shrine near the plaza of the Palace of Twilight. Now, Ganon would be cast there by ancient sages, that is to say, after his attempted coup in Hyrule. Now, this is a game that follows the child timeline, and it makes sense because the child timeline is the horror or dark fantasy timeline, which I really like. It's one of my favorite timelines. I love all the stories of this timeline. So if I gush, I think I've got good reason to gush. Anyways, Ganon was banished there after his failed coup, and he would kind of cause some corruption to happen. Now, in the centuries that had passed since they were, well, I say centuries, but millennia that had passed since their attempted coup, the Twilight had really seemed to soften quite a bit. Ganon was to install a puppet ruler by the name of Zant into the position of king of the Twilight Realm, with Zant and Ganon basically overthrowing the legitimate princess, Midna. Now, Midna herself was a very powerful sorceress, and she was restricted to a childlike impish body, when in reality she's actually a bombshell. Now, I'm, like I said, glossing over a lot, and a lot of this lore will be gone over in greater detail in later videos. For one thing, do bear in mind the Twilight were banished for a legitimate reason because of the war in Hyrule, one of the first. But they had since softened. So I'm just recapping to make sure you all understand. Now, meanwhile, Hyrule, since the days of Ganon's attempted takeover, had kind of sort of declined. And the thing is, the child timeline saw Link the hero kind of vanish, and because he was searching for Nehru, and ultimately with the hero of time kind of in time vanishing, he wasn't really needed in Hyrule anymore. Now, there is the fan-in theory that he got together with Malon before he disappeared and died in battle, an unfulfilled soul. And I quite like this theory. And I even made a video about it, about why Malon's the best. And I did it alongside my brother Dan. Now, what is more is that he might have well have founded alongside Malon Orden Village. Orden Village is where Kokiri Village used to be. And in the centuries that had passed, the Kokiri had retreated into the Lost Woods while the Hylians took over Orden Village. And at the start of the story, the Link of Twilight Princess, who is a descendant of the previous Link, that is to say the Hero of Time, wakes up and begins to prepare for the adventure that's about to be thrust upon him. This is the whole idea of where he's at. Now, as for Ganon, he comes out and kind of, through Zant, begins to try to fuse the two realms of light and twilight together and institute his own kingship. With Zelda ultimately having to retreat and, Hyrule begins to fall. This is probably in this timeline the biggest and worst threat that it's ever had to face. And so the scene is set for a story no less epic and awesome than that of A Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time, in my opinion. And so if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button to stay tuned for the next one. And also do remember to check out my Substack, where I'm writing more and more Zelda and fantasy stuff, from novels to, essays. And hopefully later this week I'll have another Zelda essay out for you all. Do take care, and also check out the book we recently wrote, Crown of Blood, which drew some inspiration from Zelda as well. So, until next time, my friends.